Hey, 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 Nicole Roberts Jones here, and welcome back. Welcome to the Meaningful Work Podcast. Excited to be here and pour into you in this 4-part series. Today is part 2. And what we're talking about is God wants you to be wealthy. So, those of you that are here with me for the first time, I need you to know that when I'm teaching a series, the way I teach one builds on the next. So, you'll need all 4 parts. Our goal is always going to be here for 30 minutes or less because I know y'all are busy. And I want to give you some great tools to dissipate anything that's kept you from the abundantly above all that is tied to you with your name on it. All right. So tonight we're dealing with part 2, I should say today, because some of you guys might watch it in the morning, some of you might watch it in the afternoon. We're at part 2. So part 1 was 3 ways to embrace financial success. Again, if you missed it, go back and watch part 1. I'm digging here into part 2, and part 2 is all about challenging money stigmas. There are things that either people told you, things you are living by, you don't even realize that are keeping you from living into the power God has put inside of you to create wealth. In order for us to move into the full power of you, we've got to dissipate any stigmas that are keeping you from it. Okay. So I'm gonna tell you this part 2 and part 3 really talk about it. 3 goes into it in even more depth, but I got to deal with some things that some of you are dealing with around money. So let's dig in. Okay. So here's the Bible verse here that will be our foundation for this part 2. It's Matthew 6:24. No one can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Now, listen, and I know I wrote it on here somewhere. The definition, mammon is an Aramaic word that means riches. It's also was a god. Mammon was a god who was worshipped to gain wealth. hmm So I want you to understand, God doesn't want you to worship money. I talked about this in the last episode about God being the source. Money's not a source; it's a resource. And you've got to really begin to understand that if you are looking at it as your source, money is becoming a god for you. That's that mammon, and you cannot serve 2 masters. Okay, so here is what I'm going to walk you through in this series is this. Proverbs 1:19. So are the ways of everyone who is greedy for gain. It takes away the life of its owner. When you're greedy for gain, instead of gaining for God, instead of gaining to be a blessing. And sometimes you bless yourself because you pay your mortgage. I said this last episode. So here I'm going to walk you through the 3 steps to employ money God's way. hmm So again, last time we talked about 3 ways to embrace financial success. Now we're going to talk about making money God's way, employing it. How do you make your money work for you? Okay. So step number 1 is don't fall into the money trap. Now, the example I like to use here is Jesus. But before I do that, let me give you the Bible verse for this second step. I'm about to get ahead of myself. 1 Timothy 6:9-10 that says, "But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and to many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." That's a whole mouthful. So I want to encourage you to go back and read it. Matthew 6:9-10, right? Here's what I want you to get, and I want to use this as an example, is again, but those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare. So this makes me think of a story in the Bible of the prodigal son. If you've never read it, go and read it. The whole section is Luke 15:11-31. Again, Luke 15:11-31. This is the prodigal son. So this is an example of someone who fell into a money trap, who fell into looking at money as the source. Okay. So I'm going to read 11 and 13. Luke 15, 11 and 13. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So it's 11 through 31. I'm going to read two verses here. A certain man had two sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So he divided to them his livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and journeyed to a faraway land, and there wasted his possessions on prodigal living. Again, don't fall in the money trap. The son said, and we see this happen to so many kids, especially in the social media age, that fall into this money trap or this fame trap, or they want to be Facebook famous. And so they're taking pictures with cars that don't belong to them, or they're doing things just to be seen. That's falling into that money trap. The prodigal son said, Listen, father, give me my inheritance now. Why I got to wait till you die? Can't I have it now? Father said, Okay, son, no problem. I'll give it to you. And he went off and wasted it all. Had lavish parties. He went and started doing all these things, buying cars and houses, and wasted all his money and had nothing left and was broke because he fell into the money trap. And I need you to understand that it's super important that you don't fall into the trap. Now, another example here is Jesus. And I said this a minute ago. Now, Satan tempts Jesus. I'm not going to read all of it. Matthew 4, 1 through 11. So anytime you're doing great, I need you to understand the enemy is going to try to come and steal, kill, and destroy. Money is one of the greatest ways he does that. So you've got to be clear and not fall in the trap. I remember, listen, I had come out and started my own business. And I started my own business because I was working for a larger training and development company, and God told me to leave because I was too expensive over there, and a lot of people that were starting businesses couldn't afford me. And so, excuse me, as I started this business, I got an offer from one of my previous clients to come and develop programs for his business, and it was a six-figure offer. Ooh, baby, that six-figure offer looks so good. But I knew if I said yes to that, it would leave me no time to do this work I was doing, that I knew that I was called to do in that moment. And so as hard as it was for me to say no, I said no. And his vice president who called me said, Did you say no? Girl, did you hear the number figure I said? But I realized then that that was a money trap the enemy was trying to put me in. And the way that I was able to bless entrepreneurs over that 5 years after that was nothing but God. And the way that I saw God grow and expand who I be. But that would not have happened had I said yes to that money trap. Another example of a trap, and it's temptation, y'all. It's Satan's temptation of Jesus. Now, again, I'm not going to read all of it, but I always encourage you to go read the entire passage for yourself, just so you have greater context, because I'm only giving you little snippets in these episodes. Matthew 4, 1 through 11 is the whole piece. Again, I'm reading sections of it here. Okay. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, afterward, he was hungry. And Jesus said to him, now I'm skipping at verse 10, that was 1 and 2. Away with you, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only you shall serve. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. Now, why did I read around it? Because look, Jesus was hungry. The devil verse said, well, if you Jesus, then why don't you turn these stones in the bread? And if you're Jesus, then why don't you? And he kept doing that, trying to lure Jesus. And if anybody's ever fasted, if you've ever fasted, listen, I remember I fasted 30 days one time. That was probably like 20 years ago. I lost so much weight. People were like, Nicole, are you okay? The amount of hunger that I had in those 30 days, baby. So if you've ever fasted one day, imagine that times 39 more days. How weak Jesus felt, how tired he felt, how hungry he felt. And the enemy always comes at your most vulnerable times. So you got to be mindful to not fall into the money trap that the enemy is trying to set for you. The second step here to employ money God's way is to check your spirit. Now, I'm gonna tell you, I got this phrase from my sister cousin, Meaty. We call each other sister cousin. And I could say cousin, but I'm saying sister cousin, who always says this at a time. Listen, she always tells me to check my spirit at a time I'm either doing something I have no business doing, or I have said something I have no business saying. and it's not in line with me. I might be angry, frustrated, and she'll say, check your spirit. And it always snaps me back into who I be. Now, I wish that somebody had said, check your spirit to Miss Eve. Come on, somebody. Somebody will get that later. So, Adam and Eve, you know the story. Adam and Eve, they're in the garden. God says to Adam and Eve, don't eat from one tree, just one. And Eve, spoiled butt, said, oh, I'm going to eat from that tree. She allowed the enemy, again, the enemy comes to tempt you, to throw her off. You can read this whole story here in Genesis chapters 2 and 4. I'm only going to read Genesis 2, 16, and 17. Again, whole story, Genesis chapters 2 through 4. I'm going to read this Bible verse. I actually just said this. Genesis 2, 16, and 17. That says, the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. See, God even spared Eve's spoiled butt. And I say she's spoiled because God asked her not to do one thing. And she wanted everything and to do nothing for the everything that she wanted. And some of you, you allow quick, fast money to fool you into being that money trap. And I think what happens is you got to check your spirit, check your motives, check your viewpoint, check where you are and who's around you and who's feeding into that moment. Because when you shift and you allow money to become mammon, become money to become your source, you begin to make poor decisions. Prodigal son. Even there, I say the children of Israel, they were stuck on 40 years and it should have been an 11-day trip, but it took them 40 years because somebody needed to check their spirit. They kept saying, we need to go back to Egypt. It was easy there. At least we had food. They weren't willing to do the work to grow past where they were. Eve wasn't willing to do the work and just not eat from one tree, just one. Somebody needed to tell her to check her spirit. And so you can be rich and you can be righteous. Is the whole point of me saying this, check your spirit. So digging further into this, there's a Bible verse called the wicked man. It's in Proverbs 6, 12 through 19. And this is what it says. Okay. The 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. Again, this is Proverbs 6, 12 through 19. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans. And by the way, a heart that devises wicked plans is that check that spirit because that was Eve. Feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren or sisters or friends. So you can be rich and righteous. God just doesn't want you to do these things. He doesn't want you to have a proud look. Come on, Dave. That could have been David after he got crowned king. He could have said, oh, I've been anointed to be king. I'm not doing this, that, and the other. A lying tongue. Oh, there's stories where you'll see when you go back and read David's whole story where Saul, the current king, started lying on David. Really? Hands that shed innocent blood. A heart that devises wicked plans. And that was the Eve and the serpent. And Eve got Adam to eat the fruit. Feet that are swift and running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among folks. That could be somebody in your workplace right now. So that a righteous person is opposite of wicked. And I need you to get this. This is why I'm reading this to you right now. I need you to understand that God wants to give you great wealth. He wants to bless you, but it's also your viewpoint. Is are you going to do the right thing when you are tested? Are you going to fall into the money trap? Sometimes you need to check your spirit because as long as we're in the flesh, we're going to have to fight against the spirit. Well, excuse me. As long as we're in the flesh, we're going to always be tempted to do something that's not in alignment with gaining for God. Because ultimately, it's I call it a who gonna check me boo spirit. Y'all remember that in I forgot what year that was, but it was Housewives of Atlanta, and one of the housewives started saying, "Who gonna check me boo?" And it's like, stop. Don't be so full of yourself. She needed somebody to check her spirit. There's nothing wrong with you saying, I got this and I got this under control. But every now and then somebody needs to check you when you are out of alignment with who God has created you to be. I'm gonna leave that right there. So with that said, moving deeper into this, here's really when you look at righteousness, this is the base of that. Matthew 16, 19 to 21. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, it's not saying don't have treasures, but what I believe this Bible verse is saying is don't focus so much on material things that are nothing but in that moment. It's an in that moment thrill. It's an in that moment thrill. But when you look at long term sustainable, co- um, how do I shift families when I give? How do I shift college students when I'm giving to a scholarship? How am I shifting the next level of folks behind me by me being who I am and doing what I'm doing? Whether it's as a volunteer, because you can lend your time, your talent, or your treasure, and you should really be lending all three: time, talent, treasure. Hmm. Right? So, with that said, that leads us into number three. So, number one was don't fall into the money trap. Number two is check your spirit. But can I tell you, ultimately, all of this is just a test. God wants to see if you're going to pass the test. Just like God allowed Jesus to be tempted. There'll be times that there are opportunities in front of you, and God is trying to see, will you do the right thing? And sometimes you got to stop and say, okay, wait a minute. Am I doing this? What's my motive? Check your spirit. Sometimes you got to look at, am I falling into this money trap? Matter of fact, this is what I believe. I keep it all the way real. People that are drug dealers that say, I'm just going to just deal drugs because my family needs money. You're falling into the money trap. There are other ways that you can make money. Now, I'm not discounting or dissipating when you're in a really hard financial place, but God is never going to want you to do something that's against, that's evil to get it. And so many people try to justify it. It's not justifiable. It's not. So, again, I talked about this already, but God allowed Jesus to be tested. He allowed it. So here's another example for those of you saying, okay, but I don't understand that. Now, there's another example I use all the time. God is looking at what you're going to do with what he's giving you. There's a story called the Parable of the Talents in Matthew 25:14 through 30. I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version. This is so important and paramount to this conversation we're having here. And again, the goal is that you're looking at how you're employing God's money. So there were three servants. This is my Cliff Note version, y'all. Okay. There was a boss, and I don't like to say servants, so I'm saying employees. The Bible verse will say servants when you read it. And the boss says, okay, I'm going to give 2 talents to you. I'm going to give 3 talents to you, and I'm going to give 1 to you. And he went away and he asked him to just keep it. The first employee invested the talents, let's say money, it's called a talents money. He invested the money and made 3 times back. The second employee invested and made 2 times back. The third employee took the money and dug a hole in the ground and just sat it there. He did nothing with it. So God is looking at how are you employing the money he is giving you. When he came back, when the master came back, he said, "Well done, good and faithful servants," to the two that invested and grew. And he pretty much told the last one, listen, you're going to be punished. So when you begin to look at how you're looking at money, how you're employing the money you're making, again, it doesn't mean you can't buy yourself nice things, but that should not be your focus. I think many successful women, and I'm saying women because the majority of you are women that listen, the money stigma comes because you're not stopping to, number one, look at how you're falling into the money trap. And so when you fall in the money trap, that's where the stigma comes. Y'all getting this? Second, you're not checking your spirit. So if you go after this, who gonna check me, boo, like Eve did, you're doing things for the wrong reason in the wrong way. And you're not stopping long enough to get in alignment with the version of you that God knows you to be. And ultimately, you've got to understand all of it is a test. Looking at what you're going to do with what God has given you. See, God is always looking for an ROI. God is looking for a return on investment. God has invested so much in each of us. He's given each of us so much. And all he's looking for is, How will you give back to me all that I've given to you? That's what I believe that tree was in the Garden of Eden for Eve and Adam. God just wanted to test. Say, I've given you all of this. I'm asking you for one thing. They didn't pass that test. And there'll be times that things come at you as well. That would be great temptations. Listen, I got a job offer recently. That, if I'm gonna be honest with you, was a great temptation because that dollar amount on there, I was like, yes, right. I was excited. And I said to my husband, wait a minute, stop. I realized I was saying yes to that job because of money. I wasn't saying yes to that opportunity because I knew it was in alignment with what God has for me. Keeping it real, y'all, using myself as an example. And so I want you to understand and really look at the money stigmas that you're creating. Now, listen, there's some that have been created in you, and that's what we call the base of profitability. I'm going to talk to you about that in part three. We're going to look at the base and how that sometimes is hindering you. But I want you to also look at the stigmas that are self created because you're falling into a money trap, because you're not checking your spirit, because you're not passing the test. Now, this one is simple and easy, part two. I'm going to tell you part three is going to be deep. I'm going to warn you guys right now, but I needed to get through part one and part two so that I can teach you part three. So, with that said, as I do every episode, share your takeaways, share the insight. Where are you? Have you fallen into the money trap? Have you ever fallen into a money trap? Share below, right? Have you had a moment where you needed to check your spirit, or maybe you're in that moment now? Maybe somebody just checked your spirit, or maybe you need to check my spirit partner. hmm And will you pass the test? Because if it hasn't happened, it will. And I always want you to look at, am I going after this promotion based on money or because I know it's going to expand my ability to serve more people and do more good through my role? Am I going after this new position I'm shifting into because of more money? Now, many of you are in transition because of what's happening in our world right now. And so some of you, your role is being eliminated. And I was having this wonderful conversation with a client, and her role was being eliminated, and they were asking her to move into another role. I said, so don't make a money decision. Make what's a good, how do you see good moving forward decision? How do you use this new role as a platform to continue the good that needs to be done around DEI in your company? Don't just jump and say, oh, let me just take the package and I'm out. And if that's what you feel God is shifting you and tailing you to go to a different company, then great. But you've got to stop long enough to understand the difference and not get stuck in a stigma. All right. So, with that, share your thoughts, your insight below. And I look forward to seeing you for part three. This is only part two, y'all. Part three, probably my favorite. I don't know if three or four is my favorite. They both are equally good. So, with that, I'll see you next time for part three. Bye, y'all.